And the chair slides appear. So they're there.
Yeah. I haven't reloaded in a while.
Yeah, you have to look up for them.
Sent down here. So,
Well, there was a problem with this.
I don't know. I just we'll just find out.
Yeah, we have an agenda.
Okay.
I can't, that's fine. And then we'll see what- Okay. All right, I think we're about ready to get started. All right, is everybody in the right place? I know after 4 days here, I actually ended up in the wrong place, so flying in at the last minute. So this is the NTP and Tictoc working group meetings at IETF 101. First of all, the blue sheets, Dieter has started the, that's what?
I think that's the first slide.
I think what he's saying is that the first slide is wrong.
First slide,
Go beyond that. Just go to that slide and go to the second page. Okay, we need a JavaScribe. Volunteers? Sam will be a JavaScribe. Excellent. I need a minute taker. Do we have any volunteers for minutes? Minute taker? That's why you volunteered for JavaScribe? Oh, thank you. Yakov is our volunteered for JavaScribe. No, minutes, excuse me. Yakov volunteered for minutes. Excellent. And Sam is our JavaScribe. So I think that is all of the administrivia. The next thing is the note well. I will note that there's a different version of these slides that has the correct cover page on it, and I know this because I remember specifically typing in that Dieter and I are the chairs of the NTP working group, and Yakov and I are the chairs of the Tictoc working group. And so there is another set of these slides somewhere that actually has Yakov in his properly acknowledged role as Tictoc chair. So, but
I have to sit here to do minutes, right? So I can't sit up.
so you can't sit up here. I will say also that we are, it hasn't been the top priority thing, but we are planning to combine the two working groups, and we've been talking about it in the past, and we will get that done at some point. So this is the note well. It's the new note well that you have seen many times this week. Next slide is the agenda slide. We were going to do a tiny bit of agenda bashing. And I actually already incorporated the agenda bashing piece into it. So I know that the Yang data model guys are going to do a quick verbal update, and then he has to run because he has a conflict. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to move the rest of the working group status down to the end, and then we'll start with the Yang data module and go from there, if that's okay with everybody. All right. So we are on to item number 1. We're going to get an update on how the NTP Yang module is going.
Hi, this is Dhruv. Thank you for accommodating this request. So basically, we made an update before the IETF. The update was not that big. Based on what was last presented in the remote presentation given by Ankit, the main changes were we added an if feature because a couple of things that were there are not implemented by everyone. So some of the optional things we made sure that those are used as if feature, especially the idea of allowing port numbers to be changed, which is definitely something we wanted to use an if feature. And apart from that, we also made sure that the examples are there in the document, which explains how the Yang models is used. So there is now XML data which shows how various configurations have been made. So apart from that, I think the draft is pretty stable. We'll, of course, would like more reviews before seeing any further progress. Thank you. Is there any questions for the model?
Any questions? How many people here have read this draft? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Well,
thank you again.
You're welcome. So next on the agenda, we have a remote presentation. Tal, are you ready to go?
I think I am. Can you see me and hear me?
We can't. You could be a tiny bit louder. I don't know if we have.
Okay, I'll try to speak closer to the mic. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Tal Mizrahi. I'm from Marvell. And we're going to give a short update about the packet timestamp format draft. Next slide, please. Okay, so the intended audience of this draft is basically network protocol designers. And the goal of this draft is, first of all, to define a set of recommended timestamp formats. And second of all, in case none of the recommended timestamp formats fits what you need, the goal is also to define guidelines of how to define packet timestamp formats. So these are the goals of the draft, just a short background. Next slide, please. These are the main changes compared to the previous version of the draft. So first of all, there were quite a bit of comments in the previous IETF meeting, also on the mailing list. And we believe we addressed all the comments. For example, one comment from Greg about terminology. We added some more details about the terminology of timestamps in general. We've also significantly changed the timestamp specification template. We made a distinction between syntax and semantics. So we believe now it's clearer. And also there was quite a bit of discussion on the mailing list about leap seconds, whether they need to be included in the specification or not. And actually, we also had quite a bit of discussion between the authors about this because it's not a trivial issue. But we decided to include it in the specification template. So right now, you'll actually see a subsection there about whether the timestamp is affected by leap seconds or not. So there's in the current version of the draft, there's more detailed text about leap seconds, and there's some discussion about that. Another aspect which was significantly revised in this version of the draft is the control field section. So first of all, thanks to the people from the Network Time Foundation, which gave us good inputs about this. And in general, quite a bit of text was added here. So now the section includes a subsection about requirements and a subsection about features and elements. So we'd really like some feedback about that. Next slide, please. Okay, so one thing we'd like to discuss with the working group is a possibility to split the draft into two drafts. And we're considering to split it to one draft, which includes the timestamp specification template, plus the recommended timestamps. And the other draft would include the control field specification. So obviously there are pros and cons here. So obviously we started out as a single draft because these two things are tightly coupled. The control field kind of defines how to use the timestamp itself. But at this point, or the last few months, we realized that the control field specification seems to have a life of its own. There are a lot of details which we didn't think about when we started this, and it seems like there's quite a bit of work that we want to do about this. So it looks like the first part of the draft, which is the timestamp specification template, is almost ready, and the control field still needs a lot of work. So we are considering to split these two drafts if that is the case, and assuming that people think that's the right thing to do, we can do that after the current IETF meeting, and we will probably be able to send the first part into working group last call, and the second part will need some more work on that. So we'd really like some feedback about that, and in general, we'd be happy for any other feedback that people may have. Thanks.
All right, any questions?
So Krishnan, so like you brought up, I was going to bring up the same thing, the stuff with Greg Mirsky. Like, did it result in any changes, like to accommodate the MPLS stuff that is being done elsewhere?
The MPLS stuff?
Like last time, I think when Greg spoke about it, he said there's some MPLS working group, MPLS working group that was doing a different kind of timestamp, and I thought you were going to sync with him regarding that, and then like do a revision, right? So like same thing can be used in multiple places. At least I understood that was the conclusion from the last meeting.
I don't remember that issue,
Okay.
so I need to revisit that.
Yeah, just have a chat with Greg and see what he's up to, because like we don't all keep track of the routing working group. So if he has something going on there, maybe it'll be good to sync up.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
I think it's okay. I didn't.
Yeah, it's Yaakov. Hi, Tal. There was a discussion in IPPM where Greg mentioned what he's doing in the MPLS. I think it's the same as what you have here. I'm looking now at the draft, and excuse me for not keeping up. But another comment I have, you don't seem to differentiate between the old PTP format and the new one, and the reference is only to V2, and what you call truncate is actually, like, let's say Y1731 actually references the 2000 and, Karen, help me, 2002 was the original, the V1? The V1 spec.
2002.
So, 2002. So I think maybe for clarity, you should separate that one. That's another little comment.
Okay, we'll try to clarify that. Yeah. Any other comments specifically regarding splitting the two drafts?
Yaakov again. I'm just reading it now in real time. Since this is a document which would help people who are trying to use timestamps who apparently are not used to them, I would actually prefer a single document rather than having two. It simply is more load for someone who would like to use this. So if you're trying to help people, put it all in one place. Obviously, if it's a constraint that means that it's going to delay the document too much, then maybe we have to compromise. But if you could finish it off, it sounds better to have one document.
Are there any other opinions on splitting it or keeping it in one? Tal, I'm supposing that since your question is to split it into two, you would prefer to split it into two, or?
I personally would prefer to split it into two, but I think, we had some discussion between the authors, and it wasn't, completely clear to us whether it would be the right answer. That's why we are raising this as a question to the working group. But I think, like Yaakov said, if we want the first part to be published soon, the right way to go would be to split the two documents. And if we prefer to have, a self-contained document at the expense of having it earlier, then keeping it as one document is the right way to go.
So could I ask you to send a note to the mailing list? And doing two things in this note. One, reminding people to read and comment on your document. And then second of all, to ask what they think about this particular question. And then we'll see what kind of feedback we get on the mailing list. Maybe make a decision at a virtual interim that we'll have coming up. Is that okay?
Sure, sounds good.
Just one more question, Yaakov again. Looking through the document quickly, and once again, excuse me for not having looked at it ahead of time. In NTP, there's also not quite a timestamp, a time difference. And I don't see you referencing anything how to do that if we needed a delta T in a specification. Is that part of the scope of this document?
I think he's frozen.
Unless
he fell asleep.
Are you still there, Tal? Oh,
Must have been a hard question.
Tal, you might want to, or Jabber. Okay, so we should move on. Okay, so apparently he just lost connectivity. Okay. Excellent. So moving on, the next, so the conclusion of that document is Tal's going to send an email to the mailing list asking for a review of it, and also asking whether we should split it or not. I think this document, this is the fourth version of this. There was two versions of it as an internet draft, and this is the second version as a working group document. I think it's time for everybody to start taking a look at it and review it. Okay, so next we have another remote speaker without slides, and this will be Anshal, who is going to give us a brief update on the Mac document. Are you there, Anshal? I might have to, you probably need to get in the queue, and I need to let you speak. Okay. Is Anshal online? Okay, so I don't see Anshal. I'll keep an eye out for her. When she comes online, I will bring her back in. I do know that we're in that sort of awkward period when the U.S. has already gone to daylight savings time, and you all haven't. And I already know that one person I expected in the meeting, I was like, you do know it starts in 25 minutes? And they were like, oh, no. So I imagine there might be a few other people that would apply to. So in that case, I'd like to talk briefly about the control message protocol. Brian, did you want to talk about that?
I don't see it on your agenda.
Oh, you're on this agenda.
Lovely. Brian
Sorry.
Hinneman. I've had the lovely privilege of trying to write the Mode 6 command document. Yeah.
I was wondering which document we're talking about.
Mode 6.
Yeah.
You're talking about the notes.
Yes, Mode 6. So I think the document is in a very stable state. As far as I can tell, it captures all of the Mode 6 commands that were documented in RFC 1305. I believe it also includes a couple of additional commands that implementations have put in. I have a pending change to address one comment on the security requirement or the security consideration section. Just adding a reference to BCP 38 to try and keep malicious Mode 6 commands off your server. So there was some discussion on the mailing list about either adding new commands or changing the way they work. I think the goal of this document is to stay informational and simply reflect what's been implemented either out of the 1305 specification or up to this date. I don't think if we were going to change the Mode 6 commands, I think it would require a whole new document with a whole bunch of other considerations put into it. So unless somebody kicks and screams louder, I'm going to say, I think after I release the next version, it should be a working group last call.
Yeah. All right, any questions on the control protocol? Next version when?
So I have all the edits. The XML is ready to go. I was going to give people to the end of the week to say if they see anything in here that they don't like. And if not, I will push it out before I go on vacation next week.
All right, so with that, Brian plans to publish real soon, so if there's anything else.
I can do it right now.
And then at the end of that, we will go to working group last call on that document. So Anshul is back online. So I think, Anshul, you need to get in the virtual queue because we didn't schedule you as a remote presenter because you didn't have slides. And so, Mita, okay, there she goes. There, that's what I'm looking for.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, we can hear you now. Thanks.
Okay. So shall I go ahead? Is it my turn?
It is your turn. Go ahead.
Okay, so for the latest Mac draft, there are two main changes. One is to the language with, we had some confusion, some doubts about must and should in section, in the recommendation, replacement recommendation section that I changed. And the second was, the second change was in response to Tal's comments on his the interoperability with the older implementations, and I fixed that in section 3. So those are the only two changes that I made from the earlier draft. I didn't see any further comments to be addressed for the draft.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on this draft? For it's the
I can't hear.
draft IETF NTP Mac. Yeah. So it's the message authentication code for the network time protocol. And it's basically just updating the algorithm that the Mac uses. I think this one has been around for quite a while now. I think we're probably ready to move it on. Are there any questions or concerns about that? And just to clarify, Anshul, you had no further changes that you needed to make?
No, as far as I know. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Anchal.
Okay.
Yes, we'll be going to working group last call on this in the next little while.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm pushing the button to get you out of the queue now, Anchal. Oh, she's already gone. Excellent. So then
What timestamp do you use for the next little while?
the next little while. You know, it's not fair to harass the chair when you are one of the chairs. That's exactly true. So the next thing on our agenda is we had a hackathon team over the weekend, and Martin is going to give us an update of how the hackathon went.
Okay, hello together. Yes, I'm Martin from the Ostfalen University in Germany, and I talk a bit about the state of the current NTS implementations and the results of the hackathon last weekend. Next slide, please. Okay, the goal was to find remaining issues in the current NTS draft, and the big question was, okay, how can we achieve it? So we started an interoperability test between two complete independent proof of concept implementations of NTS. And actually we have 3 of them. Next slide, please. Okay, first of all, to the implementations. The first implementation is mine. It's based on C++14. And it supports multiple platforms, so Windows and Linux on 32-bit architecture are supported. Linux with ARM architecture are supported too, so I can use NTS for small single-circuit boards like Raspberry Pis to transmit secure time informations. My implementation is currently 90 to 95% complete, so it's still working. On the protocol side, one feature is missing, so error and warning records in the NTS key exchange still need to be added. But it's not a problem, it's more informational for the client why a server maybe refuse a request. NTS use our own NTP implementation. So this implementation was provided by some students of the Ostfalen University, and it's a small implementation, but it's still useful and for testing purpose perfect. Finally, for my implementation, I need much more tests and code reviews, documentation, and it's much to do, but for test purpose, it's perfect.
Can I just butt in for a second, Jakob, for anyone listening? What you just said is very important. Is this an independent implementation of NTP, not based on the base from the document? Or is this someone just cut down the original, the code?
No, NTP is a complete independent implementation, because I need implementation to add NTS on it, and it's hard. It was hard for me to put it on the.
Okay, for the chairs of the NTP working group, we now have an independent implementation, not based on Dave Mills' code, which is what has been missing for all these years in order to move on to full standard.
We do have actually multiple independent implementations now, and so we are. It's on sort of the back burner of something we do need to do, but yes, you are absolutely right. We do have that. So we will be progressing NTP to full standard at some point in the, what did I say earlier? Not too distant future. Next little while. Well, no, I would say I would change it from next little while to not too distant future. It's somewhere beyond next little while. But I mean, we've got we've got several other burning things that we're really trying to focus and get done, and so we need to get it done, but we need some other things, we need to get some other things unblocked, so.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, thanks. The second implementation of NTS is provided by Daniel. It's based on Python, and as far as I know, it's only for test purpose and a proof of concept implementation. So he finished the NTS key establishment over TLS, and the NTP. Okay. Thanks.
That's why I make sure.
Python, yes, correct. And the NTP message exchange over NTP is for the client side finished. The server side is still work in progress. So Daniel writes this program, as far as I know, in a couple of days. And this on the hackathon, this was the very first test. But I'm still happy we have this other implementation to test against each other. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. The third implementation is provided by 3 students of the Osfar University by a team project. It's still in progress too. It's based on C++ 11. It's 60 to 70% completed. Currently not ready for testing. Today I received a mail, so the key establishment is ready now, but not tested. I think in 3 or 4 months, maybe in the next hackathon, we can test this implementation, and then we have more results. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, back to the hackathon. What we see is the small setup for the hackathon. So we have 3 Raspberry Pis, single board computers on plastic cases. Each device is connected to a small network switch, so each device has an own IP address. And on each Raspberry Pi, we have an NTS server. Finally, we only needed one on the hackathon, so we connected it to the implementation of Daniel's implementation, and on this Raspberry Pis, my implementation runs as server. Okay, next slide, please. Okay,
Just one question.
Okay.
When you say connected to the internet,
Yes.
what do you
yes.
mean? You mean you're using the Wi-Fi from the room, or you actually forced it to go out?
No, we have an Ethernet connection and 3 public IP address, so not over wireless connection, so wired.
But,
It's not the internet, it was just a local network.
no,
No.
Daniel was in Boston and these guys were
Oh,
here. at the
Daniel's in
hackathon.
Boston.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's the big I internet.
Correct. Okay.
It wasn't clear that not everyone was physically present.
No, Daniel was a remote participant in this.
Yes. To the test, we have 3 parts to test. So we have at first the TLS handshake, TLS 1.2 handshake, maybe later it's TLS 1.3, but current 1.2. And afterwards we have the NTS key establishment. So in this phase, client and server extract some key material, the server generates some cookies, transmit it to the client, and we can close the connection. After this, we can use the NTP connection, so NTS secured NTP over UDP. The client put a cookie in the message, we secure the message and transmit it to the server. And this last part can we repeat as long as the client have cookies. And if the client out of cookies, maybe we have a back connection, packet loss, whatever. The client start a new TLS handshake, and this is what we have to test. Yes, next slide, please. Well,
I'm sure if it runs out of cookies, then at the plenary meeting, there'll be a complaint.
Okay. Yes, what got done? On the first test scenario on the hackathon, we have one NTS client. This is Daniel's implementation. He tests against my NTS server. And the test results were very interesting because the NTS key exchange works perfectly. We found some small bugs in the implementation. We fixed them, only small things. But the NTP connection failed at the first time because my implementation was wrong. I had a understanding in the draft. So this was the reason for the failure. But I was able to fix them after 1 or 2 hours, and the second one was finally successful. After this, we improved the draft to avoid this misunderstanding for our other developer. Next slide, please. The second test scenario was on Tuesday on the code launch. In this test, we tested in the other direction. So my implementation was a client, Daniel's implementation was a server, and we tested the NTS key exchange. This was successful. At first, we have had some trouble with certificates, but we solved it. The NTP connection is not tested yet because Daniel's implementation was not ready to test at the moment. Maybe he's finished yet, I don't know. We will see. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, finally, last overview of the results. You see we have 3 parts of the communication. We have 6 test cases, so for each direction 1. 5 of 6 tests were successful. 1 test is outstanding. Maybe we can test it in a couple of days. This is perfect. And yes, finally, I think it looks very good. Okay, next slide, please. So lesson learned, the interoperability test is pretty important to find hidden issues within the specifications. And what I mean is misunderstandings in the draft. So now, currently we know the current draft works perfectly. And as yes, but I think it's a good sign if 2 complete different implementation works against each other. And okay, we have to discuss some small points. We have to perform some fine-tuning and complete the test. But I think we are pretty close to the last call, and I think yes, it looks pretty good. Okay, next slide. Oh. Yes. Okay, last slide. Yes, on the left side, you see the team members on the hackathon. Thanks about all. It was very, very great. It was a great experience, and especially for Daniel with his implementation. I know it's much work to do that, and it was very productive and very, very nice. So our code is online on a Git repository. So my code is on Apache 2 license. You can do whatever you want. Maybe write a comment. Maybe it's helpful. And yes, last comment. Our implementation was the first implementation which used the RFC 7822. Yes, I think maybe we see us in the next hackathon for more tests. And yes, if anyone questions, I'm ready.
All right. Are there, so a couple things. First of all, just as a reminder to the remote people that are on Meet Echo, there is a button you can push to get into the queue, and I forgot to remind you at the beginning. Anshal was using it correctly to speak earlier. So at this point, does anybody have any questions for Martin on the hackathon effort? No?
Okay.
Excellent.
Thanks.
I do want to thank Richard and Martin and Daniel. I think we and Dieter I think this was an excellent first start at getting some implementation experience on NTS. We do hope to repeat it in Montreal, and so I'd like everybody to be thinking now about what pieces of it or what kinds, how far along your implementations might be and what kind of testing we could do in Montreal. Perhaps we would, this one was really about just getting some initial code on the table and getting some preliminary testing done. We didn't do any in-depth testing. So it would be nice to do, to have a little bit more structure, more advanced planning next time. So any questions or comments? So, so apparently when I was creating this set of slides, and I think I have two different versions somewhere on my laptop, I have managed to edit it incorrectly. So, so at this point, let me ask, did you get that? Okay. So we have sort of a fork in the agenda at this point. Harlan, we could do the extension field draft now, or we could do the NTS piece now. I don't think we have you fully set up to be a remote presenter. And so my suggestion would be for us to control your slides from here and for you to get in the queue like a regular speaker. Okay, so he's just lost his Meet Echo window. Okay. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to leap immediately to the, why don't you do the NTS update? So we're going to talk about the NTS one. I didn't realize you were going to use that picture for this when I sent it to you. So we're going to start with NTS, and I'll figure out in the background where we are with Harlan. All right, go ahead, Dieter.
Okay, my name is Dieter. I will give an update, a short update of the network time security stuff. And thanks, Kai, for this interesting photo.
You need to be really close to the mic.
Yeah.
Just pick it up. Just take it off.
Take it off.
Just take it off really close.
Okay. Yes. Thanks for the picture. It demonstrates that it's currently under construction. Next slide. Okay. Just 1 week before this meeting, we pushed out the version 11. The changes we introduced were quite minor. There have been we introduced 2 diagrams, one to demonstrate how the key exchange is working, the NTS key exchange, and one for the corresponding time exchange. And the second change is that we renamed the structure. We changed somehow the structure and renamed section 5.7 to section 6. So that are not large changes, large updates. There have also been some minor editorial changes. So what we did not change was the section 7 that describes the possible format of the cookie. I've asked in Singapore about comments, especially for this section, because the format of the NTS cookie is not normative. So we've got now, we didn't got comments regarding this question, if this has to be normative or non-normative. So our conclusion currently is that we will keep it the way it is now. Next slide, Carl. So the results from the hackathon, we can skip that. Martin already presented it. So next steps is we want to push up version 12 in some weeks. This version shall include especially the results from the hackathon, which clarify some of the language. Then we would like the working group to agree on the next working group last call, and hopefully have another or a second hackathon in Montreal. So, question or comments?
Yaakov, I'm not quite sure how the interrupt testing was done if there's not a format for the cookie. Is that delay anything, or is it each side can do what he wishes?
The cookie, the cookie, the client no, the server is constructing the cookie, and it has to be opaque to the client. So that's the reason it's not normative in the draft. It's the draft only describes that as a recommendation how to format the cookie.
So you're saying the client has to accept any format and any size that the server serves it?
Yeah, he must not interpret the cookie. He only have to store it and to send it back.
Okay, so is there any limitation on size at least that should be mentioned?
Yes, there are some rules according to the length of the extension field in which the cookie is encapsulated, but that's described and that's normative.
Okay.
The one other thing I just wanted to mention, because I see it in the chat, is Brian has mentioned that the hackathon deserves a section to be added to the NTS draft.
Oh, okay.
So, and he's provided a reference here. The hackathon update deserves an RFC 7942 section to be added to the draft. So I just wanted to call that to your attention in case you didn't see it later in the chat. So,
okay. Thank you for that information.
Any other questions on NTS? Okay. So we're going to try this again. So the next agenda item will be the RFC 7822 biz effort. And what we're going to do with is we're going to control his slides from here. And then we're just going to put Harlan in the queue. So Harlan, if you can get in the regular queue, I will push the red button and grant you the floor. Are you getting to the queue? Oh, there we go. Okay, so do you have his slides up? You do, excellent. All right, so hopefully you can still see your Meet Echo window, Harlan, and you'll be able to see your slides as well. So just say next slide when you want us to move forward.
Okay.
So go ahead.
All right, I trust you all can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, first I would like to say that I'm incredibly properly coiffed and well-dressed. Next slide, please.
That's a thank you for sharing moment.
Well, there was a point in the presenter thing about making sure this was the case, so I wanted to let you all know I was following the instructions. So the purpose of DraftSten NTP extension fields is to provide an NTP. I apologize for reading from the slides. You get a packet parsing algorithm that addresses issues for parsing ambiguities in the face of a legacy Mac. It removes MAC and extension field length restrictions, allows shorter EFs than what we've had before. Next slide, please. It removes the requirement that extension field proposals specify MAC algorithms. It adds a note to make sure that NTP packets and extension fields should be less than the network MTU. Provides some expansion on the structure of an extension field header. and it restructures the IANA extension field table. Next slide, please. So the first change the proposal does is around 5906, which has a note in it that says extension fields longer than 1024 bytes are ignored. We got rid of that because there's benefit to using all the available space. Next slide, please. The second change we did, this was in 5905 and got removed from 7822. So we followed 7822, removing the requirement that a MAC must be present if there's an extension field, but we note that a MAC must be present if a packet is authenticated. And we note that the MAC should be either a legacy MAC or the extension field MAC, and it may be both. I'm not ever sure there's a good reason for that, but hey. Next slide, please. The third change we did, we removed the 16 octet minimum size restriction on an extension field because shorter extension fields are occasionally very useful and efficient. We also added text there to specifically let folks know about network MTUs and some other explanatory descriptive text. Next slide, please. The fourth one has to do with the NTP extension field format. We copied some content from 5906, which is informational, to a standards track document. And we note that the error flag bit will be deprecated soon because while it was specified for use by AutoKey, AutoKey never used it on the wire. One of the things that comes up is some people are saying they don't want to have to look at an extension field, the first two octets of the extension field, and treat it as subtypes, flag bits, a subcode, and an extension field. So it's entirely appropriate for people who want to simply look at that as a 16-bit integer, and they can treat it as a single number. Next slide, please. There were length restrictions inserted into 7822 to avoid some extension field MAC parsing ambiguities. And in this document, we show two ways to avoid the parsing ambiguity completely. And we also show that if you don't feel like using either of those, we offer two ways to demonstrate that the parsing ambiguity isn't a big deal. Providing pseudocode for those two examples if you don't want to do anything to keep you out of trouble. Next slide, please. There's a little addition to the peer process operation to accommodate the fact that the MAC should soon be available as an extension field instead of just a legacy MAC. Next slide, please. The seventh change is that we just moved some information from 5906 to a standards track document. And that goes to, you can read, I'm pretty sure. The MAC digest links go into there and, okay, I'm sorry, I was looking at the chat window to make sure everybody is doing okay. The MAC digest links, we clarify some stuff there and we talk about the key ID ranges in the key ID field. There's some information about AutoKey protocol messages that is actually pertinent to NTP itself, not just AutoKey. We talk some about error recovery and some other items that ended up in 5906 that really were more general. And then we restated the IANA table for extension field type reservations, knowing that we're planning to get rid of the error bit. And that table also includes the checksum complement stuff. For whatever it's worth, I updated the draft STEN NTP extension fields document, I think it was last night, and I got rid of some historical information that is not really useful anymore, apparently, and I fixed the table to be consistent with what it was in an earlier, in the original form. Next slide, please. So here's the list of the 7 classes of changes that the document has, and I think that's the last slide, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it's the last slide, then yeah, I assume somebody will have, I'm assuming there will be questions.
Okay. So what I did was ask Harlan to put together a draft that clearly articulated what changes to 7822 he was, and to extension fields that he was proposing. So at this point, this is the summary list of changes, and I'd like to open the floor for questions.
Jared Mott from Akamai. So I think it was slide 3, but you don't need to change, because here, number 1, the extension field's longer than 1024 octets. Is there a max size? Because there's a discussion, unfortunately, I can't remember which working group earlier this week about dealing with fragmented packets and what network operators do with fragmented packets. And I want to just have an idea of where this is and how you're going to handle packet fragment reassembly, just in the protocol to ensure that things are getting correctly reassembled if you do end up with some third-party device fragmenting it, or if the intent is to always set the DF bit or something else to mitigate those types of issues.
The funny answer that popped into my head is I'm going to refer to the network superglue document, which does not yet exist. But the serious answer to your question is the original proposal told folks to use something less than 64K, and this proposal specifically adds a sentence in there that says, while you can have a really large extension field, you want to make sure that you want to be careful to not exceed the MTU along the network path. So there is no specific information involved in what to do if you're going to do that. Open to suggestions for it. We tell people to avoid the problem.
Sure, I'm just concerned that I don't want to have an NTP version of path MTU discovery in addition to normal path MTU discovery as well.
I don't want that either.
Yeah, I just want to be mindful of that.
Okay. Yeah, it's easy enough. Our expectation is that in the reference implementation, if it ever becomes useful to have this, which I imagine will happen soon, we'll just have a parameter that says for some given association, what's your MTU? And there will also be a default.
Okay. Any other questions on this draft? There's somebody's. Oh, the echo is coming from Harlan. Okay. Okay. So, Harlan, you submitted an updated draft. I have had absolutely no chance to even look at it, but you know that. So, and you said you took out the historical stuff, and so I'm assuming that the current draft is focused specifically on, like this presentation, on what changes you're asking for?
The draft 12 removes some of the stuff from the introduction, and it changes the IANA table for extension fields. There were a few other cleanups along the way, but if anybody sees anything they think shouldn't be in there, let me know. There are a bunch of places in the text inside square brackets where I raise points that basically say, hey, we need to make a decision about this. Does anybody have a preference? And those will all go away as soon as we feel like we either address them or ignore them.
Okay, so this draft is currently let me double check before I say something wrong. Somebody's got some lovely music in the background. Wind chimes, yeah.
Oh, no, that's the cat saying he wants out. Is there a way I can mute myself?
Yeah, I can take you out of the queue. I just wasn't sure if,
If there
I'll
are more
take you out.
questions, it would be handy to be, oh, I see what I can do. I'll just mute myself for a moment, and then if anybody has a question, I'll do that.
Alternatively, I could mute you.
Okay.
So just get back in the queue if anything comes up. So so this draft is currently an individual submission to the working group. And the point that we've been at before is whether or not to adopt this draft as a working group document. Is there any opposition in the room to doing that?
So, Brian Haberman, as I walk up here scratching my head. So what would be the intention of this document in relation to 7822? Is this going to become the genesis for making an update to 7822?
Yes, it would be updating 7822.
Okay.
I think we need to, I think that we needed a clearly understandable document first before we really understood the relationship between it and 7822. What we've asked for is to get the extension field stuff specified and separate out all the new extension field into other drafts so that we have, this is what NTP extension fields look like, and then go forward. So I don't know if it's going to, in some sense, update. I don't know if it's going to obsolete it, or I don't know exactly what it's going to do yet until we actually see what the document looks like.
And that's my question is, and that's something that the working group needs to consider then is this an update to 7822 or is this 7822 biz?
Right.
And completely overhaul how the extension fields work.
Right. So I put it on the agenda today as a 7822 biz because I was really trying to focus the conversation on what's in 7822 and what do you want to change?
Yep.
And
Well, I'm
so,
just here to amplify what you were saying.
okay, so you're amplifying me. That's fabulous. So at this point, I think we don't have any more discussion in the room on the document. I'd like to move the question to the mailing list. We'll put out I don't know, Harlan, if you want to jump back in the queue or type in the window. My question is, did you want to do another update before we do a call for adoption, or are you confident with the, or are you ready to do the call for adoption with this one? I say that having, oh, wait, there you are.
Assuming I'm speaking now, I don't have a strong preference, and there are several areas in the document where I ask, or I guess we ask, because this is something that Dave and I worked on. What do we want to do about these points? So if you want those resolved before we move forward, great. If you are okay moving the document forward and then we address them, that's fine too.
What do we want to do about what? I'm sorry.
There are sections of the document that have text in square brackets that ask questions that say we need to make a decision about this.
Right. So we can have things that we haven't made a decision on. That's fine, because we expect that the working group will actually make some of those decisions. And one of the things is that once it becomes adopted as a working group document, it's the consensus of the working group for what actually goes into the document.
Okay.
So, but I think part of the struggle with getting it adopted initially as a working group document was the the clarity of what the document actually said, and I think we're making steps in that direction. So, Sam, you're at the mic.
Sam Weiler, thank you, Harlan, for making the effort to do this presentation and make it a little bit clearer, because the document I struggled with. I think the working group should consider the individual changes on their merit more than the doc. And is that making sense? I'm looking around the room and getting puzzled looks. I see that the changes in here seem to stand alone from each other mostly. And I think we could make a decision about which of these we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had actually originally thought we would just go down this list and go one by one and discuss them. But but then it occurred to me it might be easier to do that on the mailing list.
It might. But I would do that.
But it was my intention that each one of these technical changes we need to make a decision
On
on
each
this
one separately,
change.
more
And
than
so
on the doc
adopting
separately.
the document doesn't mean that we are agreeing to do all of these changes.
Jared Mach, Akamai. So Sam, I was just going to say a very similar thing, which is that we can submit a draft document, the working group can adopt it, and we can decide to adopt 7 documents or 1, and do it in whatever format is necessary to make it easiest, such that we can advance these things in an appropriate way to ensure that it's well documented. I think my only concern would be in just probably if we're doing a BIS document, it probably does make sense to have it all together, but that's pretty much it. We could do it as 1 or 7.
Yeah, I'd kind of prefer for them to be 1 just because.
And we can always remove something.
Right. Okay. So with that, I'm going to kick you out of the queue again, Harlan. And the next thing on the agenda, oh no, we've already done this one. So Harlan, the next thing technically on the agenda was the new extension field proposals. But in all of our activity over the last few days to talk about extension fields, I didn't actually focus much on the new extension fields. I wonder if you want to just step through at a very high level and say what the motivation for each one is, and then we will discuss them in more detail at a virtual interim that we're going to have. I just really thought the more important thing this time was to get the draft STEN NTP extension fields done. I see you back in the queue, so.
Forgive me for asking this. Do you have a list of them? I'm trying
Yeah,
to go through the ref ID ones in my head, but I'm going to forget. I'll forget something.
So it's in the, unless I did a copy and paste error, it's in the agenda that's on the data tracker. But the ones that I currently had on the agenda were the extended information, the Mac last extension field, the IDO extension field, and the suggest ref ID extension field. So there were 4, I believe there are 4 draft stems associated with new extension fields.
Okay, how about if I start through and...
And in fairness to you, we don't need to go through them today. I just, I didn't want them to be ignored, but I also thought it was much more important to focus the conversation on the other one.
Okay. The first one you mentioned was extended information, as I recall. And the primary motivator for that was there are people out there who still use AutoKey for the sole purpose of getting the TAI to UTC offset. And that's a fairly heavy way to get that information. So I created an extended information EF. And one of the first things that I put in it was, what's the current TAI to UTC offset? There's some other information in there as well that we can add into, because we're not really using much of the packet, and depending on what we're doing, we can extend it pretty easily and in a backward compatible fashion. So that's extended information. What was the next one?
Mac last EF.
Okay. This is a combination of 2 proposals that you asked me to combine Mac as an EF and the last EF into a single proposal. And so we did that. there are many ways to go for the MAC field, and in the spirit of we'll give you a robust mechanism and you can decide your local policy. One of them is to avoid ambiguity in parsing. One of the things you can do is not send a legacy MAC. So for that to happen, you'd want to put the MAC in an extension field. So that's one choice. Another choice you could do is make sure that there is a last extension field, which I think is a whopping 4 octets long, that says, hey, I'm the last extension field, so any data after me must be a legacy MAC. Not telling anybody to use either of these, but if they do, it means that there won't be any parsing ambiguity in the face of a legacy MAC with extension fields. The next one was which one?
The I do.
I do. So if you've got 2 arbitrary NTP instances sitting there and you want to know what capabilities each one is willing to admit to the other they offer, what one side will do is send an I do request that basically says, hi, other side, these are the sort of functions and extension fields and things that I support. Please tell me more. And the other side will respond appropriately, where appropriately may mean a crypto NAC, which is interpreted as meaning, I don't know what you're talking about with this new extension field. Or it could be an I do response, which is, hi, other side, these are the things I'm willing to admit that I do. And it's just and this can be renegotiated down the line anytime either side sees fit. It uses the response flag that's been in the header since AutoKey, because if I send you a request and you send me a response, we just had a nice exchange. If I send you a request and you respond to it with another request, then you end up with a deadly embrace, and it creates an ongoing communication that just isn't necessary. Daniel, we're not using it to signal it. It's what happens when you send an I do response to an old version of NTP. It doesn't recognize it, so it thinks it's seeing bogus legacy MAC, so it responds with a crypto NAC. So it is a pleasant side effect. It isn't a design decision. What's the next one, Karen? The last one?
The ref ID.
So there's a whole bunch of proposals for ref ID changes. They include things like IPv6 hashes. We have had a case where the IPv6 ref ID hash matches an IPv4 address in the same enterprise. And so we wanted to make sure we had a way to signal that we were dealing with an IPv6 ref ID hash. And if I'm not mistaken, that is the one that returns the first octet of 255. I don't remember which one of them returns 254. That one might be leap smear. The reason for that is there needs to be a clearly visible way in the packet, even to legacy clients, that the server is sending them leap smeared time. And if you choose to do that, an easy way to do it is to send back a ref ID that says, I'm giving you smeared time, and here's a, I think we get down to about a quarter of a millisecond. This is how far off the time is from true time. And you're not expected to use that for anything, except it's a really lovely test to make sure that the leaf smear is progressing as you think it should at this point in time. But it is a very clear indication that you're following a leap smeared server. There is one that says not you that Sharon likes. Her proposal was that I may not want to tell you who my system peer is, so I'm simply going to give you a signal that you won't know, that is clearly not you. And in doing so, you know that I'm not listening to you as my system peer, and you can choose to synchronize with me. And there might have been another one. I know one of the other is the next one suggested ref ID? Or?
Yeah. I thought you were already talking about the suggest ref ID one.
No, the suggested ref ID is an extension, is a different one. That says,
I have 4 on the list: extended information, MAC last EF, I do, and suggest ref ID.
okay, so this wasn't the overall, here are some new ref ID proposals. There's an extension
No.
field out there. Go ahead.
No, these were the 4 drafts that proposed new extension fields.
Then the suggested ref ID might be in one of these proposals. The suggested ref, there's no, what?
Yeah, in any event, it doesn't matter. I was just, we have it in the agenda. We have the 4 extension field proposals, and so I think the next piece of the agenda was specifically ref ID updates, which was, I think we might be conflating pieces here.
I just went ahead and told you about some of the ref ID update proposals. Then the suggested ref ID is different and should be discussed in this section. The trick is that a ref ID is something the other person tells, that I tell other people what my system peer is. There is currently no way for someone to say, if you use me as your system peer, use this as the ref ID. And the suggested ref ID proposal does exactly that. And the reason for this is that attacks can be mounted if I know who you're using as your system peer, then there are attacks I can mount against you because of what I know. But the suggested ref ID is effectively a random number, and it uses something else. I don't remember what the range might be. And the purpose there is to say, if you use me as your ref ID, use this cookie, and that way a bad guy who sees it won't know that you and I are talking, and the bad guy won't attack you, or won't be able to attack you because they know who I am.
Okay. All right. My point in putting these on the agenda for the working group is the 4 extension field proposals are individual submissions, and so we'd like to get some review on those at some point, and because at some point we'll need to make a call about making them working group document. And the ref ID updates is a working group document that we haven't spent a lot of attention on. And so it's time to, at some point, it'll be time to move that one forward. So I don't want folks to forget about them.
Thank you.
So at this point, we're at the end of the NTP working group agenda. There are a few other drafts that have not had an extensive update since, let me find my other, since the last meeting, and I don't want us to necessarily forget about them. We do have a BCP that's ready to go to the IESG. I wrote a note sent to the IESG because I promised myself I would send it before I got to this meeting, but I'll have to say it's ready to go to the IESG. The NTP data, the client data minimization, this one is ready for working group last call. We'll be issuing a working group last call shortly after this. I have to admit, in all of the excitement of NTS and extension fields, we forgot to do that. The client data minimization. Right, there is also an NTP correction field, and there's been no updates to that, but that's also sort of blocked on us resolving the extension field issue. And then there's the NTP interleave modes. This is one that I do believe is ready for working group adoption. There haven't been a lot of comments on it. It's something we've talked a while about getting out there. And then there's also a draft on implementing time, was presented last time, that was suggested that we adopt in this working group, but there has not been an update on that one since the last IETF. So if you are not familiar with the data tracker, if you look at the NTP working group under the data tracker for this meeting, you'll see that all of these drafts are attached to this meeting. While I might have gotten the slides out of order for the agenda, I did get all the drafts attached. So, so that concludes the NTP portion of this working group. meeting? Are there any other NTP issues that we want to bring forward? Okay. So the next portion of the agenda is TikTok. And for the TikTok agenda, we have a quick working group status. And the status of this is we have 2 documents that are also ready for the IESG. We've completed the Yang data model for IEEE 1588v2, and we've also completed the enterprise profile for the precision time protocol for mixed multicast and unicast messages. And this profile actually also had some, has had some implementations in the context of the IEEE 1588 Plug Fest that's done at ISPCS. So that brings us to draft Alvarez Hamlin TikTok SIC. And so are you ready? All right. So this is a presentation on synchronizing internet clocks from Alvarez Hamlin.
Hi, thanks to give me room to present my work and also to the ISOC because I am one of the TECH fellow. This idea is related with the secure clock synchronization. And then the first thing that I want to discuss is who is needing a secure clock synchronization. Next slide, please. Then I put just 4 types of applications related with this problem in different way, but localization, cryptocurrency, games, and measurements. My drive to do that was measurements because I am also in IPPM group. Next slide. Then the idea is to understand more or less where the protocols works. And in this graph, we got here the error, more or less an idea. We have insecure, secure, insecure. We have also frequency and absolute. And we can see NTP. Okay. We can see also PTP, which is the IEEE protocol, and TEC, and my proposition, SIC. These protocols are software produced, software related, and this one, okay, this is not the protocol, this is GPS, it's provided with hardware. Then, then this is the main differences. Then I put here a line like RTT because imagine that the RTT is there. You couldn't assure a better synchronization than the RTT. It's related. There is also, here there is also a bit difference with SIG. Here there is a bit problem. Normally TSC, when you are running in one environment, perhaps it's not so good. There is some kinds of that, about that. Next slide, please. Then, no, okay. What is the working principle? Okay, as always, a client, server, internet in the middle, but we send 1 packet per second, and we perform some statistical analysis. Normally, 10 minutes later, the protocol should be synchronized. In order to add security, we signet each packet, which means that we can verify that really the information inside is good. But one of the problems when you signet the packet is the the time that you take to sync the packets. Therefore, we do this in some delayed fashion. I mean, we send the previous signature in each new packet. Well, why we synchronize frequency? Essentially because there is some asymmetry in the normally every came and back route has the different paths, and it could be possible to do something absolute, but this is a next step. Okay, it's absolute when you are in the tens of millisecond, but if you want to be in the tens of microsecond, absolute for now is not possible with this technique. Next slide. This is just to show what happened with the minimum RTT, because mostly of the software-based synchronization methods are based on minimum RTT. Here we got 7 hours, and we estimated the mean RTT in each minute, and we designed it, okay? As you see, the minimum RTT varies, has a lot of variation. Therefore, it's not a good estimation just to use the minimum RTT. What we do is we study the traffic statistically, how is working the RTT in the statistical way, and we found a way to retrieve something more stable than that. Next slide, please. Well, this is just cumulative distribution where we show 2 cases. One, in every case, there is a client in Buenos Aires, and the second client can be in Buenos Aires, in another network, or in Los Angeles. And I illustrated in the table the quartiles. The Q2 is the median. As you can see, it performed very well in comparison with the RTT. Next slide. Well, this proposition proposes a secure synchronization around 2 microseconds of errors. Okay, it depends on the RTT, but 2070 milliseconds of RTT is far away. We are focused on frequency because the asymmetry of the paths, and it's a client-server software distribution. We already have one implementation in GitHub. For the secure part, we have just the client. We are doing because if the client detects that there are a problem with the secure signature, we drop out the synchronization. Synchronization has different states. We do the same in a similar way from the server side, and well, this is not implemented yet, but we are doing this in few days. Well, you got the draft and my email if you have some question to perform.
Yeah, this is Yaakov. I must admit, I looked a little bit at the draft and heard your talk, and I'm a little bit confused about exactly what you're aiming to do and what you think is new here. First of all, let's talk about what you're aiming to do. You're saying you're trying to get frequency. To what scale? How many ppb or ppm do you expect to get in how much time? We know exactly, given the distribution of the delays, how good you can do. And the ITU standardized doing FPP which you can look at your distribution and do, you don't actually minimum gate, you don't have to get only minimum gate. It's enough to have any weight someplace in the distribution, which is more than what you'd find over a smooth distribution, and you can lock on that, and it's well known how to do it. So what are you looking to get, and why do you think you have something which is not known here?
Well, first, I say it's a frequency because I couldn't do better.
Within what accuracy are you looking to do frequency?
In frequency, it's 1 ppm, no, less than 1 ppm.
So you're talking about
because-
1 ppm.
Yes.
So it's very, very coarse resolution frequency, because 1 ppm is considered, and no, it's not something that most of the applications that I know about, maybe gaming, it's good enough. So you're looking to do 1 ppm, okay. And
It's less than 1 ppm. If you do the math, this is 20 microseconds in 1 minute. It's less than 1 ppm. But okay, I agree with you that 1 ppm perhaps is not the best.
it's something that you could do with NTP, in my opinion, but okay.
No,
fine.
it's not true.
Yes, it is. But okay, I can show you.
We can discuss that.
When you say secure, that's the next. I'll do it quickly. When you say secure, what is the threat you're looking at that this is secure against? Because signing a packet doesn't.
I don't want that anyone can modify the timestamps.
Modifying the timestamp.
Yes,
Right.
because they can inject some
Right,
information
understand.
to you.
But you know there are a lot of attacks which do not involve changing the timestamps. For instance, simply delaying the packet a little bit along the way and things of that sort. Security in time is not an easy.
Well, okay, perhaps somebody is delaying the packets, but it's no.
Okay, so you're saying security against packet modification. Okay.
Yes.
You know what, let's take it offline. Once again, I'm not sure what exactly you're trying to do and what is different here, that's all.
Yeah, I think taking it offline, and I think you'd be happy to talk to Diakov.
Okay,
for a while.
yes. Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey,
Kyle.
Kyle Rose. I have a more basic request that I took a quick look at the draft, and there appears to be a white paper for an algorithm that you're not using or that you're improving upon, but no white paper for this. This feels to me like it's in the realm of research, and so I'd like to see the math and everything that this is based on before jumping into an implementation and adopting that into a working group that's trying to produce actual software.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you are asking if it is some research or if.
Right, what is the research that this is based on? Like, what is interesting here and why, and what's the, and how can I read about that? I didn't find an informational reference in there about
Right.
what you're doing uniquely here.
So you're looking for more links to information about his research, more detail about the research?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Relaying from Jabber from Daniel Frank. How does the security scheme cope with delay attacks? Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, so, I think you got some comments already on this document, I believe? I might be conflating it with another one, actually. But in any event, thank you very much for presenting this. I encourage everybody to read it and send any comments. If you could send, a little bit of, maybe send to the list a few links or some additional information like Kyle was asking for, that might help people as well. Okay?
Okay, sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with that, we have come to the end of the agenda for today. Are there any other questions or comments? No? Excellent. So I do appreciate all of you hanging out for a rather late session on a Thursday of IETF week. With this, we will adjourn the meeting. Oh, sorry, one more thing. We will work on a virtual interim meeting. And I think we're probably looking at 4 to 6 weeks from now. And we will send out some sort of a poll to get some scheduling information together for that. We have a bunch of open drafts. It would really help if people would take a look and read some of them. And with that, is there anything else? No? Thank you all very much.
I'll send you the minutes. I have to just clean them up a little bit. Pretty extensive minutes. I'll just send them to you, or you want me to upload them?
Yeah, so.
I must have, yeah.
Ooh, that was
Send the both of you.
Can we read this?
Yeah. Well, I think it was interesting.